I think there's been this expectation, I think, of a lot of people that this has been like an incredibly prolific time for songwriters. You're in quarantine, you can write all day and write about all these things. But Patterson and Lily both told me that I think for the first couple of weeks they wrote a lot. And then after that, they really had trouble writing and I think really struggled. So I guess, has this been, I guess, it's kind of a answer this both ways, Gillette, but has this been like a prolific time for you? But in general, is it difficult to write when you're in the midst of pain and anguish?
I'm usually a pretty prolific writer. I
Yeah.
like pride myself on that. And I have written many songs this year, but not really. I've been forcing myself to do it. And it's hard. I mean, I feel overwhelmed often by the task of trying to explain what the fuck is going on in my brain and what's going on in the world because I feel like it's hard to not talk about it if you're writing a song right now. But also, my whole process is different right now because I'm used to being at home alone, and that's my time to just be a freak. Like, I walk around my house and talk to myself, and like, I make food. I don't shower. I do shower. I become not like really a human. This is my cat.
Perfect.
And
Oh,
uh,
what a beauty.
this is Lou. She's part of the writing process.
Excellent.
Um, but I got married this year, and my husband is awesome, and I love him, and we're doing a really good job being home together. But having another person in the house kind of changes the energy. So I have a hard time like really being totally like free to just not be a put together human being. And I need to like not have any structure and not have any kind of like real life stuff to be able to go into my place. Because when I do that, I'm like writing like 5 songs a day, and it's like an exorcism of some kind. So yeah, it's been hard.
Okay, Langhorne, how about you? So I guess, how easy has it been for you to write? And in general, is it difficult or easy for you to write during times when there's just a lot of emotional weight?
I don't know if we were already recording, just in case people are watching this and wondering what this thing is. It's just a cat wand that that I need to implement when I'm on the computer on something like this because my cat will not allow um,
That's great.
to go smoothly. So it's just to distract him. And from what I know for me personally is that I have been able to write an awful lot during this, but I don't know that it's because of the political state of things, a tornado state of Nashville, or a global pandemic, not to mention the social and cultural things that we're living in. I was experiencing a lot of inner turmoil and noise and chaos. And what this, and certainly not to, I always preface it because I'm a neurotic Jew from Pennsylvania, from suburb of Philly. But it's like I think it goes with. I hope it goes without saying. I never mean to diminish, nor do I think most of us the challenges and the horrors that all of this has created. On a very personal level, it's enabled me to slow down and simplify um, from almost what seems like a lifetime of running both toward and away, and often I didn't know the difference, to some sort of divinity that I was seeking, and that I was in obviously music, which is the great love of my life, but also a naughty relationship in different ways. I think that expectation for ourselves to find, is a little cheesy, but I'm a little cheesy, to do what we must to be available for the spirit when it's there, and to channel that. Of course, people's processes are different, but that's how I view it. I hardly, sometimes I work on a song, but a lot of the time I work on it, but I think it's just quieting my damn mind to allow a thing to move through me. And I think that I know for me, the coming back to Nashville, I was in California. I was going through a lot of shit. I came back, tornado hit, pandemic hit, and I was forced to slow down. A gift that I didn't know that I needed probably, or I wouldn't have taken it.
Okay, Gillette. The other thing I think I've been hearing, since March, with touring not happening for who knows how long, in general, do you write better with big expanses of times, or are you more effective or efficient with deadlines?
I I've had a unique experience with time. Maybe it's not unique, but I like to think it is. I've always been someone that's had a lot of the privilege of a lot of time. Um, because I think I stood up for that. So I, from a young age, started prioritizing open swaths of time over everything else because I knew that I wanted to be writing songs all the time. And I think the best songs ultimately, or at least the ones that feel like they're the most honest, come out of just really being able to just work your brain for a long time and just keep doing it. And like, maybe that means writing a ton of songs, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe it means just living your life freely and then the songs come. So I'm probably an open swath person, but I will say, like, some of what Sean was speaking to about the social media thing, that part really does impact me. And I think in the pandemic, it really has reached a new level where I need to I need to figure out how to structure my time a little bit more, because you can get swallowed, and I think that comparison is the death of creativity, and so are these now ever-present formats that artists are, I guess, supposed to be engaged in order to sell what they're doing if they want to make a living off of it. And so I wonder if my large swath of time stuff might need to change. Like, if I was given, like, hey, actually, I have an example. I wrote a Christmas song a couple weeks ago because I was like, oh, the holidays are coming up. Maybe it would be cool to write a Christmas song, and just having that kind of like, oh, if I'm going to do this thing right now, I got to do it right now, was really fun. And it helped me really organize my thoughts and just kind of like cut to the point instead of sitting and like wallowing and worrying and comparing and then getting lost in my phone and then wondering what the fuck I'm doing with my life and like if anybody will ever care and all that bullshit that really is so besides the point of why I write songs.
Sean, yeah, are you a deadline? Do you write well under deadline, or do you find that that's not an efficient way for you to write?
It really depends. I've had to work with some deadlines for actually like writing songs, and I don't know if that helped or hurt. I was able to come up with some songs. I think that the part of how I was gifted a wave to ride creatively in these months was that there was zero expectation, there was zero pressure, there was zero deadline from anybody for me to do a damn thing. And somehow within that, maybe that broke something open that I was able to access a wave of creativities. I think there's expectations and pressures too. I know I've had them 40 of like, oh, particularly last year I wasn't writing. Oh, maybe I did my best stuff. Maybe I'll never do this again. Look at this person that's doing this. And it's like, man, for me, it's a fool's game and it doesn't get me anywhere. And trying to like embrace the ride of growing and continuing to find my own voice as it, as it changes and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess my follow up to that is, how do you acknowledge? It sounds like you acknowledge those pressures. Oh shit, I'm 40. I'm not. And how do you acknowledge those pressures without without making them become a burden? You know what I'm saying? Like you know that they're there.
Because I've allowed them to become a burden, so I could recognize that. I've also
Gotcha.
thought on the flip side that I lived outside of the social condition laws somehow because I've been a traveler, music person, and then certain things hit me, and I'm like, oh no, you ain't as you're not as much of a rebel or something as you had liked to think. Like, you know, turning 40 did affect me in certain ways, and just like this time around, it wasn't even career or that as much as it was some of the other stuff that comes along with um, aging beautifully and gracefully as a single man. No, but you know, there's other societal pressures that I realized. I was like, where's the baby and the wife? And I'm like, well, they ain't here, so that's all right.
Yeah.
Um, but I just don't know that there's any. Maybe some people just really don't care, you know, and that's amazing. I think anything
True. I just feel like that can't possibly be true. That there are.
that I've ever had a honest conversation with that does what we do has expressed that to me, and it turns out that most of the fears and the crap that I've had, you've had, and so does everybody else that does this. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just like what I try to do in the rest of my life lately is to not believe every thought that I think. I got a fearful, anxious mind a lot of times, and that could take me into some dark places. Um, so yeah, I don't know. You just kind of I do think it helps to talk to other friends and musicians, and just like it does if you experience other sorts of, you know, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I talk to other recovering alcoholics to help me feel connected and not as like isolated in that stuff. So I think with anything that we get, you know, spun out in our minds, it's just trying not to like live, uh, not to spend too much time in those thoughts.
Okay, Gillette. You said something at the beginning, and your process, your ritual, I guess. And I'm always interested in the rituals of writers. So it sounds like, I guess, do you have an ideal time of day, place, things you have to have with you when you get your best writing done? It sounds like you did a lot of moving around, walking around. But I guess what does that ritual involve for you?
I think the only thing that really helps is having a piano and a place to be alone. I can write with other people around, but I probably usually get distracted. It's not as much it's not as much self-conscious, but yeah, I mean, I think I'm not really that picky or precious about it. It really, I feel really lucky that I started writing at such a young age that it's just like a pretty natural part of my like way of living. So I don't really need to like snap my fingers 3 times or like have my favorite, mug nearby. Um, but maybe it would help to get some of those things if in times of feeling like it's hard to get into the groove, because I certainly experienced that. But I I think it's just more about um, you know I think, Sean, you said something about being able to be quiet and still for long enough. And I think there's something about that in combination with being able to really start to hear the little voice. Because the little voice to me is the one that's really speaking the truth. And then, like, being interested in what that voice has to say and, like, following it and, like, following silly shit, like making up random shit about my meal or, like,
Yeah.
what my stomach's doing, or just like shit that you really don't think you're going to write a song about. And then all of a sudden it's like there's like just this thing happening, and words start to fit together. That's like a puzzle, and there's like uh, there's just kind of no getting off it when you're really really locked in. And I think I often take that for granted when I'm not really on that train. Because, well, when I'm really on the train, I take it for granted, because when I'm off it, I realize that I would kill to get back on, like, because that's me being like the inside of myself. Um, and that's me like discovering something, not necessarily like discovering something about myself. I mean, maybe, but like more of like a passenger, I guess. And that's part of the thing about trying to disengage from social media, and also still try to, like, have a career. But like, I think it's taking the ego out of it is really really big. So that's part of being on the train and listening to the small voice, is like not really taking credit for that, but really being excited and like curious and a little kid again. I think whatever it takes to feel like a kid. And honestly, like, for me, no structure helps me feel like a kid.
So, feeling like a kid, what do you mean by that?
um, feeling un well, okay. When I wake up in the morning and I know that I am going to work out and then meditate and then talk to somebody about, like, I don't know, a plan for a release of something, and then have a call with my publicist, it's really hard for me for the rest of the day to be like, I'm going to write a song. Because my brain is all of a sudden like, okay, these are the tasks that I do. These are the responsibilities that I have. Oh, it's time to eat lunch. But if I wake up and I'm just like, the day is whatever it is. Oh my God, it's beautiful outside this window. I really feel like going and sitting down and writing a song. I feel like I'm a kid again, because I'm like really in the moment with what the day is. And there's no kind of like sense of like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is who I'm supposed to talk to. And this is what I'm supposed to act like. Um, just like, I feel like I'm not really articulating this very well.
No, I'm fascinated by this, but I'm fascinated because if I hear you correctly, once you start the day as an adult, it's hard to recover from that,
Yeah, I think
right?
I'm noticing that particularly this year, because
Yeah,
I've spent a lot of my life not living like an adult, to be quite honest.
yeah.
And that's why
So,
I've written so many songs.
yeah, so I guess when you feel like an adult and you want to feel like a kid, are there things that you do in order to get back into that headspace?
I think I'm trying to figure that out right now. I've been feeling more like an adult lately than ever before, and it scares me a little bit.
Getting married will do that, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's really, but I will say, like, my relationship with my person is very childlike. Like, where there's a lot of joy and we act like kids, so that's really beautiful. And a
Yeah,
lot of songs have come out of that. But I think that he has a real, like, a 9 to 5 structure in his day, and so I kind of like am, just by proximity, I kind of start doing that. And
yeah,
I'm trying to make shit happen so that I can keep doing the thing that I love to do and keep being a kid for the rest of my life, and so that I don't have to go and like compromise that. So some of that requires like being a business person and getting shit done and doing my homework and like doing the shit, like explaining my songs. I don't fucking want to explain my songs either. I
yeah.
mean, um, and those, yeah, those sides of my brain really, it's been really interesting to watch. They don't like each other at all. So I think it's going to take maybe further compartmentalizing, like maybe more structure, like maybe 1 week I'm a kid and then 1 week I'm an adult. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, but it's an idea I had this morning in the shower. John, you and I have chatted like a couple of times, but we don't like know each other super, super well. But I just have like from my conversations with you and being a fan, I feel like if we're talking about the kid thing, like I in being around you, I feel like that's not a struggle for you. Like it seems like you are, that part of you is pretty alive. But
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know, but I appreciate it. I will say, like, stuff that I was, a couple of things were coming up from listening to you answer this, and one was I've read it a bunch of times because it's really short, and I've always liked it. But there's that Letters to a Young Poet, and I think of this part of it all the time. I don't even know if this is exactly what he says, but it's how I took it, which is like you're talking about like writing whatever that is, and then when you're not, you would give anything not to. I mean, anything to get back on, or taking it for granted when you are.
yeah.
And if I remember it correctly, Rocco was saying something like, "We are never not riding the train. We're never not creating. Anybody that is creative is always in motion." And the way I take that for me is that there's such an emphasis on the final product, the finished product, whether that be a song to sing, or I could, we're talking about songwriting, so we'll keep it in that realm. But I think of this in a lot of realms of my own life, and that because there is this perceived mountaintop, you can fuck up your journey because you're not enjoying the process or the journey. I'm not saying you. I'm saying me. One, definitely, this is something that I deeply relate to. And so it's interesting to me to try to remember for myself, which I don't do successfully that often, but to try to remember that, like, whatever's going on, like I'm always, there are things happening. I'm picking things up along the way that will get me to the mountaintop of some song at some point, and that it's not always the final record, the final song. And when it is for me, that's when I put so much expectation on that, and what that is, what that should be, what that can be, how good am I, all of this stuff. And then I get into comparing to others, and then I get into ego, which is, I don't think ego is a bad thing. It's a lot of things. There are parts of my ego that are definitely not helpful.
Are you, when it comes to lyrics, are you a pen and paper person or a computer person?
When I'm not really like fighting it or trying really hard, I don't know, when a thing is happening, I just tend to remember it. And also I use my little computer, this thing, that I just dropped on the floor. I used to use one of those professional Walkman that you could record, and I like that. In fact, I found that when I would use that as opposed to voice memos on the iPhone, they were more complete ideas, which I think is interesting. Whereas on my voice memos, there's thousands of just like, jing-a-dang, well, okay, something I thought might be good, and but when a song is kind of becoming a song, I don't know. I can remember the words to it, and maybe I'll write down the words sometimes, or I'll just which I wouldn't recommend anybody doing, particularly if you're like me and don't remember to like back your phones up and all that kind of shit, because I've lost a lot of ideas that way, and I've cried real tears over that. But that's what I will do is, I sit, and if I like it, I play it over and over again, and maybe I go take a pee or something and the song's still there. I'm like, okay, this must be a song. And then maybe I'll sing it into the phone.
I like to look at it because I do a lot of writing on the side also. When I don't look at it as superstition. I look at it as confidence. That if I've written in a place before, like a physical occasion that's given me success, why not go back there? It certainly can't hurt. It probably doesn't mean anything, but that confidence alone, like John Darnielle from the Mountain Goats, I interviewed him a couple of years ago, and he told me he wrote one of their albums, every song at the dining room table, because and his quote was, "That's where the mojo was," and
Yeah.
he felt like once he wrote one there, he couldn't leave.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
to me, it's confidence.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on the person. I have that a little bit, not as specific, but like my mother, the house that I grew up in, still my mom's house in Pennsylvania, in the living room downstairs where I like sleep, and since I'm like, I don't know, I didn't. It doesn't really matter why I sleep down there. But have written some of my favorite songs in that room. So to the point where when I go there, and I always leave a guitar. Something I do is leave. Unless I'm fortunate enough to have another human being, but share a bed. I sleep with the guitar in the bed, and it's always just right there. And I feel like there's some kind of heat or mojo that might get something happening with that. And also it's just there in case an idea floats by and I'm like, nah, we'll get to that later, which we all know a lot of times it's no longer there. It'll be right there. But the guitar will be right there. I can add a pressure to myself, going back to this expectation nonsense and all that. If there is a room or a place or a time where I've done some stuff that I've liked, then when I'm in that room or space, I'm reminded, well, shouldn't you be writing a song that you love right now? And
Ah, yeah, yeah,
I just don't respond well to that kind of inner pressure. But
yeah.
my home here in Nashville has been a very creative, and I think there's some sort of, I don't know, there's something.
Yeah. Gillette, how about you? Let's start with this: pen and paper person or computer person when it comes to lyrics?
Actually, I'm pretty similar to Sean in that I don't really write stuff down. And when I started writing as a kid, I was using like a tape recorder. I did actually go through a phase of writing lyrics on Post-it notes and putting them all over the piano. And at one point, it was like my piano was entirely yellow, which was funny, um, but and not a good method at all. Um, but I now just use the voice note thing on my phone, and I, it's not that satisfying. I mean, I think I may want to go back to the tape recorder thing just because it's too distracting to be within such close proximity to these apps that have been built to make you addicted. Um, but yeah, that's generally my process. I think the days I used to be able to write and remember all of it, like, and never have to record it. I think that those days are over. If I really like dig it and play it a few times, I'll remember it like pretty well, but I can't just like hold on to something forever. Um, but I do actually, it made me think of a ritual that I have. I tend to need to be looking out a window. That's like,
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. You got to be looking out a window. Yeah. Why? What does that do?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's like helps you get out of yourself a little bit or something. I don't know. There's something like romantic about it. I used
Mhm.
living in New York. I loved like just looking at buildings out the window and letting this kind of like fantasy thing sweep into my brain, and that used to start up songs, and now it's just kind of like a habit. I'm just looking at grass now and pretending that I still live in New York.
Right. Exactly. Uh, I'm reminded of what you guys were talking about, and that is when I was a professor, I told my students, your writing process is always taking place, right? It's happening when you're eating, when you're sleeping, when you're walking, when you're taking a shower. And if you think about the writing process only happening when you're sitting down, you'll never get anywhere. But that idea of and I think to me that's confidence, right? I know that somewhere deep in there my writing process is happening, even though if I'm not actually sitting writing things. And Jeff Daniels, when I interviewed him, he said, because he not only, of course, is he a, he writes songs, but of course he's an actor. And as an actor, I think someone gave him that advice is as an actor, you're on 24/7. And he talks about my job. I think he said his quote was something like, my job basically involves stealing because it involves listening to what other people are saying and then taking what they say and using it in my songs or in my acting. And always that sense of being hyper aware of your environment, to me, it's just some element of comfort. Like, okay, I may not be writing, but something's going on in there. So,
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's why I've talked about social media so much in this in this Zoom call of ours, but it's been on my mind a lot because I think I'm just I'm noticing changes in my brain that I would like to unchange. There is a an awareness, I think, that as a human, in order to like be a happy human to some extent, or at least be in touch with joy in a way that in like a daily way, you have to be in relationship with your environment. And I think it's really easy to lose touch with that right now because we're all looking into our screens and we're looking at
yeah,
phones and I'm noticing there's like a little dull thing that happens like with my creativity. So I think it makes me kind of scared for future generations. It makes me really hope that there's like a loophole that for art that will bypass that, or maybe I'm like overreacting to it, but I think like you have to be really with all of it in order to talk about it and express it and like understand it. And um, there's not a lot of life in there.
yeah. And that is exactly what Lily Hyatt told me when she, your fellow Nashville resident, and she talked about how much of a struggle it's been because she hasn't, I mean, the practical idea that she has not been around a lot of people and being and interacting with people, that's what helps her write songs. And so if you're not outside, if you're not interacting with people, it's hard to write about things. So I never thought about that, but she said it's been a real struggle because she can't go outside and she can't be around people. And if you can't be around people, yeah, then you're relying on social media, and that's not really the best way to write. So I hear what you're saying, and she really echoed that frustration with the creative process.
Well,
So
and it makes a lot of sense that this is what's happening because as like human beings, our brains are evolved to
yeah,
connect to other people. I mean, if anybody saw that movie, The Social Dilemma, I'm totally ripping that off, but that's like yeah, you get dopamine from connecting with other people. So you're given this tool that kind of tells your brain, oh, you're connecting with someone and you're connecting with them really fast and a lot of people at the same time. And now that we don't, from this year, have the ability to go and sit with somebody and have a long conversation, or even just like go to a coffee shop and run into people, like I think there is there's a vulnerability this year in particular that I'm certainly feeling. And I think Lily's point is very astute. I feel the same way.
It's wild to I haven't been alive that long or done this thing for that long, but in the time that I have, it's changed a bit, and definitely like the social media stuff is a big part of that. And these people that I've romanticized, or their stories, like Thoreau, like going down to the cabin and finding solitude and writing these great works. Mr. Get Down. It's like I've romanticized all of that in my own way, perhaps too much. But it is interesting. Now we live in a time where it's like if you aren't, it's this constant content. Oh fuck! And if you don't have something to say and sell every minute, that you might not exist, you might disappear. And I think it's super dangerous. I play that game too, I'm on that stuff. But it's like there is another. I don't necessarily worry for future generations or whatever. I mean, I worry a little bit for us now, in that that's like that is a ideology that ought to be fought at all costs, in my opinion. there's something to be said for, uh, one doesn't need to be writing, again, King Lear or something like that, but there's something to be said, I think, at least for me, for like shutting up from time to time, getting quiet, which is hard for me to do, sitting with myself, which is hard for me to do, not getting validation from strangers or from fans or from potential partners or whatever it may be. So just to like sit and sit and feel it, whatever it may be, like that is that's some real shit. And I think that there's so much noise that eventually, and we're already there, in my opinion, all the noise becomes static, and we maybe even care a little bit less about what everybody has to sing or sell or say because everybody's constantly, feeling like we need to be doing it all of the time, and it's myself included. I'm not. I mean, I'm a participant in the madness, and I have these conversations with friends or with people. A lot of what Gillette's talking about, and maybe I've already said it, but people will say, "But you have to do it because this is what you do." And it's like, man, I didn't. If you told me 10 years ago I would have an Instagram account and I would post pictures of me and my cat and trying to sell you my music, which is okay, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but my relationship to it, there could be something very wrong with it. And what I'm using these tools for, and what we're all kind of using these tools for. So I don't know. It just seems like there's a danger. We're certainly not the first or the last people to speak on it, but of like the constant content, constant noise, and it's just like, at some point it just becomes like that snow on the TV that I used to see. And I know for myself it's difficult to not have some kind of man-made noise going on around me at all times. And that could be social media, that could be whatever. It's tough to sit and be, I don't know, be still and be quiet. And for me in these last months, I've done that a tiny bit more than I have been able to do it in the past. And when I'm able to do it, it can be challenging, but it feels good.